I'm Suzi Landolfi, and welcome to Be Crazy Well.
You know, I have to tell you something, Stephanie. What? So you can't say the S word now that you're going to be a mother. So the S word. So when I said that to my grandson, so I'm sitting here with Stephanie and Tyler, and they're about to have a baby any minute. I mean, I may be delivering this soon. So step into the camera just a bit, Steph. There's the baby right there. So my little grandson is in nursery school, and he comes home, and I realize he's going to hear a lot of stuff, right, that we don't say in our house.
Yeah.
So I said to him one night, I said, hey, Logan, I got to tell you something. Now that you're going to nursery school, we don't say the S word in the family. Mm. And he has this big grin. And he goes, you mean shit?
Yeah.
And I go, no, we say shit.
Yeah, that one's allowed.
We can't say stupid.
Yeah, that's good.
You're not stupid. You just said I'm so stupid when you did that. No more. That's stupid, the last time you guys can say you're stupid, something's stupid, an idea's stupid, a person's stupid. Because that little kid will eat that right up.
Thanks, Suzi. You're such a good therapist.
Yeah, I am a good therapist. But we say shit.
Yeah.
We say shit all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm a good therapist because I'm crazy well.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be crazy well. Oh, that's what the name of the podcast is.
I love that name.
Isn't that a great name?
Yeah.
Yeah, my daughter wants to sell merch. I love saying merch.
We need to have merch.
Yeah, it sounds so young and hip, merch.
Well, I'm all about merch. I think that we should have more merch in our life.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Right? More shit, just
more stuff.
But not more stupid.
No more of that. No merch that says stupid on it.
That's right. Tyler, when was the time I asked you to be on Be Crazy Well? How long ago?
Oh, it's been months. What, about 6 months, 8 months, maybe even
before that baby was conceived.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot that's happened since that point.
Yeah. I don't think you even knew Stephanie then.
No, but I'm glad to finally be on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm so grateful you're on because you have a story and a fucking half. Oh, we do say that here because I am a licensed therapist and it is a clinical term. So I want you to know that.
Good.
And I'm from Boston, fucking A.
Yeah, I need right. I couldn't even. The moment I found out I could cuss is when I actually came onto the show.
That's right. That's it.
Yeah, I was like that. I could just throw some good 4-letter expletives out there.
That's exactly. Well, you probably got a few considering where you were raised.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to just ask you to start your story, tell your story.
Sure.
And we can go for an hour or longer. Mm-hmm. And because I want people to understand something, it's not what's wrong with you. It's what happens to you. Then it is what you do after what happens.
Yeah.
That's where you're the expert. Right? Because shit happened and happened to you.
Yeah.
And then once the shit hit the fan, you had to take 20 years.
Almost
20 years.
And still going though, because the lesson, it's a life journey.
That's right.
Right? Of understanding the power of our own choices and how they can either empower us or how they can impede and block us, from improving or growing or at any point just changing the circumstances of our situations in our lives.
That's right. And even if we can't physically change the circumstances because of your situation, I'm just so excited when he lets you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You can change what you do in that situation.
Absolutely.
So I have a friend, he's still alive, who's POW of the Hanoi Hilton from the Vietnam War, and he lived for 8 years in an 8-foot cell.
Yeah.
So what he did in those 8 years was nothing short of miraculous, and he survived and thrived and came home.
Yeah, well, good for him.
Yeah.
And for those that go through that situation and come out on the other end, seeking health, right, and being balanced in our life as opposed to letting that be the sole description of our stories.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, Tyler, where did you spend a lot of your life?
Yeah, so... well, I'm 38 years old, and the majority of that 38 years was spent incarcerated. I was 17 years old when I went away. I attempted an armed robbery. Fortunately, nobody was physically hurt, but, the consequences of that choice cost me the next almost 20 years of my life. And longer, if it had been what was initially told to me when I was sentenced, because I was sentenced to the equivalent of life without in prison. And, growing up in the system was a very difficult thing, because I initially felt extremely powerless, and that my life was no longer within my control, and that I was going into an environment where every choice was going to be made for me. And so that's how I spent the next 19 years. So from the age of 17 until 36, almost 37 years old, I spent incarcerated within the California prison system.
What happened the first 17 years of your life? So because you've talked to me before about I'm a huge believer, and now we have all the science to prove it.
Yeah.
And you're about to have a child.
Yeah.
What happens to us pre-birth on? I say pre-birth because what Stephanie puts in her body right now and how she feels and what's going on with her is affecting the growth of that son of yours.
Yeah.
And what you say to that child, I hope you're talking to it now because it's important
absolutely.
for them to know your voice.
Yeah.
So to know what happened to you that led up to that attempted armed robbery, which tells me you weren't very good at it.
Yeah, no, it was like, not to minimize it, or to make light of it in any way, but I was not cut out for a life of crime. And, when I went in, nothing went as planned. Nobody did anything that I told them to do. It was chaos. A person ran out the side door. This was at like 10 o'clock in the morning. And I got scared and I ran out. And then I was arrested probably 5 minutes later, walking down the street a few blocks away. And an officer pulls up, and I was meeting the description that had been put out. Mm-hmm. So, not sophisticated in any way, more of a desperation for acceptance and for a certain lifestyle.
Yes, because of what happened from birth on.
Yeah.
Some of that.
Yeah, so I grew up in a very toxic household. My parents divorced when I was probably about 5 years old. I have memories of them being together, but it's one of arguments, of anger, and a lot of shouting, a lot of name calling, things like that. When my parents split apart, my dad pretty much took on the role of being a single parent because my mother, my biological mom, was very neglectful and abusive. And so my father was the more responsible parent. He was always kind and empathetic, although very strong and stoic in a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. So I kind of grew up in this dichotomy, right? And where my father was responsible, my mother was irresponsible. Where my father was kind, my mother was sometimes cruel. And that was in another rough part of California called the Antelope Valley, right? Lancaster, Palmdale. For those of you that are listening or that are watching, know it. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, it's an environment of drugs and gangs and crime and poverty and anger. I just remember how angry everybody is out there. Angry about something. Angry either about what is, what they feel is being done to them, or angry about what they see being done to other people. Either way. And even though it wasn't directly in my house, drugs and crime and gangs, as far as my father went, it was in the school system. It was friends' houses and things like that. And so I grew up in that type of environment, one that was really unhealthy and toxic.
Were you in the sibling lineup? Because we actually have some science about that. Where were you in the sibling lineup?
So I'm the middle kid, right? There's four of us. I have my older brother, Pete. Love him. Little brother, Pierce. and then my little brother and my little sister, Paige, and very close to all of my siblings, but I was the middle.
Yeah, I have the middle kid, too.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of science about that.
Yeah, we're wild, you know.
Yeah, we are.
We're the wild ones.
We are. We're the disruptors.
Yeah,
you
we're
know?
the disrupt. Right.
Everybody goes, okay, there's mom, there's dad, there's oldest. Okay, I'm going the other way.
Yeah, but you know what's funny is being the middle kid, and this is I feel really thankful for it because I always had two best friends, my older brother and my little brother, because I was right in the middle of them. So, and my little brother was 2 years younger, and my older brother was 2 years older. So, to this day, I have a special relationship with the both of them, and I'm connected to both of them in different ways because I was my little brother's older brother, and I was my older brother's little brother.
That's right.
Yeah. And it's taught me in my life, right, in ways that are like so beneficial, where sometimes I have to be the little brother in life, and sometimes I got to be the older brother. And it's kind of cool that I grew up understanding those roles and what that feels like.
Yeah. What was it like for them when you got arrested?
Well, I mean, shock, one. I had already been... So when I was arrested, I was brought to the substation in Lancaster. I was shipped off to a camp called Challenger in Lancaster. It happened on a weekend where... On Monday, you catch a bus where you're shackled and chained with other kids, and you're brought down to the juvenile hall system, because the camp is a place where you get sentenced to when you're a juvenile. So they just housed me there briefly for a couple of days, and then took me down to the detention center in Sylmar. And I was there for about 3 months before my family even knew, right? Because so. To backtrack a little bit, when I was 15 years old, I decided that I knew all the answers to my life and that I was going to go in search of those answers. And I ran away from home. And 2 years later is when I committed the attempted robbery.
So they didn't really have a lot of connection with you for those 2 years.
So for those 2 years, I was busy for those 2 years. Within probably about 6 months, I was hanging out with a local gang, another crew of kids whose parents were, either not there or were abusive in some form. They were like me. They were just kind of like the lost kids of the town. And then one of the kids' older brother had got out of prison. And this family had moved from South Central LA up to Lancaster, to try to create a better life for their kids. Mm-hmm. But their kids still kind of continued, and then they just expanded the gang out in Lancaster that was originated in South Central. So I was hanging out with this kid. His older brother gets out of prison. I was about 15 years old. And I wanted his older brother to really I wanted to impress his older brother, because I felt like his older brother was like really from this lifestyle, that him and I were trying to live as these runaway kids. And so anyways, make a long story short, the older brother starts grooming me basically for a life of gangs and crime and stuff like that, and takes me down to South Central, where I spend the next probably about 8 months to a year down there. And I got initiated into a street gang down there. I was a Crip, and from a very old, very serious Crip or street gang. And then I was back and forth between Los Angeles and Lancaster, and my family just, they were out there even at times looking for me. And my dad and my brothers and stuff like that. But I was completely just in the streets.
Your mother ran away too.
In what way?
So when parents get really mad at kids, or they're abusive, and they blame them, the child believes it. Mm. They believe everything that the parent says about them. Yeah. And does and doesn't do for them. So when your dad became a single parent, so she abandoned you. She was not really there if the only reason she's there is to blame you or to get mad at you or abuse you.
Yeah, I think this is the complication of what abuse looks like and how the victim of abuse, of an abuser, and how complicated it is to discern. You feel like this person loves you, but at the same time, this person hurts you.
Right.
And so it was a very confusing thing that for many years I had to disentangle in order to be able to kind of like have some clarity in my life and break habits that I had developed because of it.
It's training.
Yeah, so I understand that. I get what you're saying is that in some way the child feels abandonment, and how my mother really ran out on us. And in a lot of ways that's true. I think she did more than that. I think she ran away. My mother was born and raised Jackson, Mississippi, right, in the deep South, during a time of segregation, civil rights, all these different things. She passed away not recently, alcoholism. She drank herself to death. And her parents, my mama and papa, were very, of that place.
Racist,
abusive, back then they used switches and stuff on their kids, you beat it into them. Yeah. And if not that, then you pray it away. So my mother was a renegade inside of that. And she was the only one that left, the South and came to California.
So wait a minute, let me get this straight. Your mother ran away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you ran away?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My mom, I remember recently, before she passed away, I hadn't seen her in about 15 years. And when I came home, I was, I had always, on the inside, I had always put it away as something that I would get to if I came home, because I had to keep her at arm's length. She was so toxic and so lost in all of those.
All of her trauma.
That's
right. That
out of self-preservation, I needed her to be removed and had some distance and some boundaries between us.
That's painful.
No, it was one of the hardest moments in my life. I was about 21 years old when I made it. It was also at that same time that I started to believe in the power of my choices and the reality that I had made choices that created all of this unhealthiness and destruction in my life, that was incarceration and all of that. And if I had made those choices, well, then why couldn't I make choices to do it differently?
Oh, pragmatic young man.
All choices.
Right.
I was about 21 when I realized this. I'm proud of it because I followed through with that in my life, even up to the point of where I had to make a choice of whether or not I was going to have my biological mother, who I loved so much, be in my life. And I had to say that she couldn't be, through the pain. And it never got easier, even to this day now.
That's right.
But I am okay with the choice because I understand now what the difference is between healthiness and unhealthiness, and the importance that comes with, even when it comes to family, deciding healthiness for your life over unhealthiness.
Safety and danger.
Yeah, safety and danger for sure.
Right.
So, so she had ran away, I ran away, and where I was going with that story is that when I walked into the hospital room after having not seen my mom for 15 years and saw her for the first time, and she was emaciated, and the disease had just completely destroyed her. And she was always a beautiful woman, like beautiful hair. And I told you once that you reminded me of her. I see in your eyes and in your hair, there's so much of her in you.
Oh, I'm glad.
Yeah, no, it's the lighter side of her, right? There's a look in your eyes that I remember in hers, but without the fear attached to it that I used to get. Yeah. And when I walked into the hospital room and I saw her and cried, and I crawled into the hospital bed and I held her, and she was just this little old woman now, and when she looked at me, I had this feeling that she loved me so much, and that what she saw in me were the best things about herself, without all of the twisted, warped things that had been created from the trauma in her life, and then her not facing the trauma, and choosing a different path. And I like that because there's a part of me that's like her, that's wild, in how I view life, and excited and curious. And I love I love being able to explore all of what life has to offer. And without, though, the things that trauma attaches to it, right? Like manipulation or selfishness or, or hurt or dishonesty or being motivated by ego, right? Trying to always.
Which always sits on top of lack of self-worth.
Oh, man.
So you're a little boy looking for value.
Yeah.
You wanted to be valued.
Yeah.
Because she was incapable of helping you feel valued.
Yeah.
And there's always one kid in the family that takes it harder than the others.
Yeah.
And the middle child is also the emotional child.
Yeah. I saw it as my duty in my family with my siblings as the protector in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And so I was the one that voiced a lot, and I was the one that ran away, and I was the one that stood up. And it's funny because I asked my brothers and stuff like, how did you guys feel when I ran away? Like, were you mad? Because I wanted to, I know that was really hard on them to lose their brother in that way. And so I wanted to let them know that I was at a place in my life that I understood that and how sorry I was for that. And I asked him, and he said, no, my little brother and my older brother, he said, we're never mad at you. And I went, how could you not be? And they said, because you did what we all wanted to do.
That's right.
And so like I was championing them in a lot of ways.
Yeah. You have something else besides, we talk a lot about trauma, and unfortunately as a therapist, I'm only trained to talk about the negative effects of trauma.
Yeah.
All the anxiety, depression, bipolar, whatever. Yeah. There's something called post-traumatic growth, of which you have tons of, Tyler. I like Dr. Bruce Perry. He talks about post-traumatic wisdom.
Yeah.
So everything that you're saying right now, and we'll get into the prison soon. We'll talk about what you did there.
Sure.
That idea that you started to understand that you had some superpowers, some strengths, and you have some self-destructive, because children, everything we think about ourselves was either done to us or told to us. Remember that every thought, every feeling was either done to us or told to us. And we are at risk of doing to ourselves and others what was done to us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was, that's a huge portion of why it was so easy for me to fall into resentment and anger and fear and all of these different things is because, that's what had been done to me. That's what had been told to me.
That's right.
That's what had been done to my parents and told to my parents. That's what had been done and told to the community that I lived in. And everybody experienced in some way. And so for me, it's like, those emotions are such a slippery slope, though, because they're bottomless. There's no bottom to it. It's a pit.
It is.
And the longer you allow yourself to be in that, and I want to say allow yourself because I also think it's important to recognize and witness the trauma.
Yes.
Right? And for me, I never liked to think of myself as a victim ever, even when I was a little kid. From an early age of like 10, 11 years old, all of these different things, I always responded to my fear with this impulsive confrontation, right? Mm-hmm. And so for me, so much of just continuing that type of behavior and that type of response over and over and over again just reinforced it and then kept me on that path.
Yeah. So you walk down the street and you get picked up because, like we said, you're a really bad criminal. You're just not good at it at all. I never would have got caught, so I didn't ever do it. But oh my God, I would have said he went that way.
You would have had it all organized.
Oh my God.
This is. I mean, you're from Boston, though.
Not only am I from Boston, too, and my dad was so abusive that I became such a good liar. I tell everybody I could have been a triple agent.
Right.
Fuck double agent.
Right. Weaponize your ability to deceive.
Exactly. It did make me a very good actress. So that's the other good news.
Yeah.
The other thing, though, then, that when I crashed and burned and started to rebuild myself, and we're going to get to your part now of you doing that, honesty was the first thing I wanted to learn how to do. because I was so terrified of it.
Yeah.
Right. I was terrified of being honest with myself and other people because lying to my dad meant that if I was a really good liar and I said what he needed to hear, he wouldn't abuse me.
Yeah.
So there was always that, okay, what does he need to hear? And
Okay. Yeah.
So
isn't that funny though, how those that come from abuse learn how to be very careful with your steps.
Absolutely.
Very careful with that.
Read the room.
You read the room, take a temperature,
people.
and then start to like make an adjustment. I still do this to this day.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have to challenge it because it's a skill at times.
It is a skill at times, and you then get to choose, because you're all about choice.
Yeah.
You get to choose and say, okay, I could say it this way so that they feel more comfortable and everything, or I could just fucking tell them. Right? Because they need to hear it direct. So you have choices.
Yeah, you get right.
Yeah, right?
Right.
So I don't have to always make everybody happy. I don't always have to calm everybody down. I can just say, that doesn't work for me. I'm not doing that.
You know, it's funny because that very behavior of responding to trauma, where I'm careful, right, with everything, and I always leave myself an exit strategy, right, and those types of things, and it was really reinforced and went into probably a level of artistry while I was in prison.
That's right.
At 17 years old.
That's right.
In an adult men's institution, and I'm there.
Yeah.
And this is the system at that time was so unprepared for trying juveniles as adults. I don't know about now, although I'm reconnecting with that side of advocacy and stuff like that. I feel like it's important, and I feel ready. But where I was going with that is, what were we talking about? I lost my train of thought.
I was just going to say that you went inside and knew how to manipulate or manage.
This is what, right.
Manage.
So I come into the institutions. The institutions were not designed to house juveniles in the adult system. And so at that time you come into the California Department of Corrections, and this is before it was Corrections and Rehabilitation. It was just called CDC, which stood for California Department of Corrections. You go to what's called a reception center or a guidance center. And what that is that's like a way station of where you're going to be housed from that point. Mm-hmm. And you see counselors and all these different things. And when you hear counselor, you think like therapist, like somebody there to counsel you, but it's not that. It's more of a caseload worker who has a file.
Right.
And then, you get asked like your name, your race, right? You're like your gang affiliations, if you have any, right? Do you have any enemy concerns? Do you have like all of these different things comes into play. And then what happens is you get assigned to an institution based off of a point system that is determined by how you answer those questions. So as an example, you'd be asked things like, how many children do you have any children? Have you ever served in the military? Were you working? Are you married? So these are all questions that are asked that are relevant to an adult life, but not to a juvenile's life.
Yeah, right.
When you answer no to those things, like let's say, for example, I don't have any kids, never served in the military. I didn't have a job. I didn't graduate high school. All of these things against me because of my age, you get points given to you. And the higher your points go, the higher security prison you go to. So when I was 17 years old, just to be sentenced to life, I had what's called a hard 19, which puts me automatically at a level 3 or a higher security. And then based off of me answering no to a lot of these adults' questions, I ended up being sent to the highest maximum security prisons that you can.
Wow.
Right from the beginning at 17 years old. Actually, I was 19 by that time because court proceedings and all of these different things. 2 years had passed by of me being in county jails and courts and stuff like that. So 19, never been to prison, never been incarcerated. I have no record. I definitely deserved to be there, to be honest with you, right? Because of how dangerous I was living, and less about me, but more about me being dangerous to everybody else, even through my recklessness, even through my impulsivity as a kid and all of that. I'm so happy that I was actually removed because, you know, at any time somebody can just be hurt in a way that they lose their life or that and then now this permanent thing has taken place that can never be undone. Yeah. And I witnessed a lot of people that were there for that committed that continued to commit crimes that were of that severity. And it's so hard of a place to find purpose in after you've done something like that. So my point out of that is, here I am, 19, I've never been through this system before, have no idea what's really going on. I'm a white young kid from a black gang in South Central LA, which immediately put me as a target where I was what's called green lighted by the entire white race.
That's right.
And then sent to the highest, maximum, most dangerous prisons right away. And
they knew that.
I think that.
I mean, I get that they got the point system. They got to ask everybody the same questions.
No, they just didn't give a fuck.
Exactly.
That's it. They knew.
That's exactly right.
It's not even that there was even, because I want to give a shout out to so many of the staff that were a part of CDC and then CDCR, which is what it became, California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. But I want to give a shout out to a lot of those guys, right? And
they helped you.
Oh, Mr. Bishop and Calipat, right? Who's retired now, but Carr and Jacobs. And I mean, I can go on with so many different people from juvenile hall all the way up that were the ones that made me feel a sense of responsibility to, because of how kind they were to me and because of how they treated me like what I was, which was a shit little kid.
Were you surprised when that happened? Did you expect
I wasn't surprised, but I was comforted by it.
Okay.
Is what it was.
Yeah.
So by the time it came, when I allowed it in,
right.
For my first initial few years, I wouldn't even allow it in. I was just so.
That's what I was thinking.
I just didn't even, I didn't even recognize it, didn't allow it, lived a completely different lifestyle. And then once I was into my 20s and deciding this new direction in my life without any excuses, I didn't care that I had life in prison. I felt like living a life of purpose and of empowerment over my emotional experience as well as my physical experience, that was valuable.
So you're in prison
Yeah.
for life.
Yep.
And at 20 years old, roughly 21, you decide you're going to have a life of purpose. Do you know how crazy that fucking sounds to people out there right now that have everything and can't find purpose?
Yeah.
Who are free and have money and have a nice car?
Well, I'm going to tell you this right here. In the 2 years that I've been home, I've had monumental success. I have broken all types of statistics and stereotypes.
Yes, you have.
From the moment that I was in many different ways, both in the destructive side as well as, because I also was the only juvenile, my case was published and all of these things. I was the only juvenile in the history of American law who was sentenced to the equivalent of life without, where no firearm was discharged, nobody was physically hurt, nobody lost their life. I was the only one. So even in, there was just these monumental things taking place. But my success in coming home and all of that, to me, has to do and is completely interwoven in a foundation of living a life of purpose.
I agree.
I look at the people out here in a lot of different ways, and many people that are struggling to find that content and to find, or the contentment, to find that sense of fulfillment and purpose in their life, and that are unhappy and at the highest levels. Right. Of success and money and talent and support and like every different thing. And one of the most interesting things to me in coming home has been that living the way that I did in prison, once I started to have those realities and those realizations come into my life, now is such an asset to me out here.
Oh my God. Yeah. You were like in a 20-year Buddhist retreat, basically.
A violent one.
A violent.
Although the last probably, this is what I was talking about in social navigation, right, and in like situational awareness and how living a life of having been nurtured in an environment of abuse and trauma led me to toe that line and like test water and temperature. And that got reinforced while I was in prison, right, because now I had to learn how to survive. And I did that. And I thought about it only in the physical sense for my first probably about 5 years. And then when I started to have that realization of choice and empowerment and all those different things and wanting to feel like, and remorse. Yeah. I mean, remorse was so interwoven into all of that where I was like, how can I give back? I want to live some form of amends. And if I can't give direct amends, right?
Right, to the people
that I actually
could with
hurt.
The people here.
I could in the way that I lived my life,
right, for
the rest of my life, right?
So what'd you do? What are some of the things you did in prison? How did that manifest? Like,
I went on to many. Well, first thing is that I started to take therapy serious, and even though it's not something that's available inside of prison or readily available, I did whatever I could in order to touch it as closely as possible. So I entered into whatever self-help groups they were, right? 12 steps, all of that. I've been a part of executive bodies of all of these things. I've been a part of them for many years. Anger management, creative conflict resolution, Women Wonder Writers of America, right? Like all these, I would just take workshops and just be around, self-help and betterment. Then I started to, first I denounced gang membership, and I became what's called a non-active gang member in the state of California prison system. And what that means is when I denounce my membership and I become non-active, that means that one, you're no longer accepted by the active members of the gang or of the prison system. And then you go over to a yard that is created, right, for those that have denounced their gang memberships and are trying to create a new life. Now, over there, I started to realize that many people just fall back into their own habits anyways. They create new gangs on these yards, continue with drug abuse and all of these different things. But for me, what it did was it gave me the freedom to make the change to no longer be a gang member in this life. And now it was up to me to stick to it. Right. Now that I have been given the space for it. So it first manifested, right, in me denouncing gang membership and being open to a new path. Then it led into me discovering self-help groups and attending those. That then led into like an appreciation for education. So I went back, got my GED, went on to college, all of these different things, right? And this love for learning. From there, I went on to be of service. I wanted to give back some of the things that I learned. Right. So I started to be of service in prison. And I looked at it less of a place that was I started to look at it less of a place that didn't matter because my real life had been taken away from me and now I was incarcerated. So none of this matters. And I stopped looking at it from the perspective of I'm not a part of it, that I don't relate to anybody because I no longer want to think or act in ways of abuse and criminality. And I started to look at it as my community and the fact that I have a ripple effect in wherever I'm at and what type of effect do I want to have. So I started to be of service in ways that were beyond like, being a sergeant of arms in an AA program, right? Or an NA program, right? And more of, how can I do the things that I love and use them as vehicles, of being of service to others? So you weren't just doing time. There's so many people. I went on to a budding art career. I became a fine artist, had gallery showings on the outside. I have a curator in Laguna. Shout out Suzanne Wall. She's amazing. I created boxing programs, where I had camps of people that I trained as though they were going to compete. I was a barber, right? Where I barbered and I cut hair and I was, that was my actual job assignment for my last, like probably 6-7 years in prison. It was my current job assignment when I was released, because my release was unexpected on how.
Yeah, how did that happen?
So, okay, so I had lost all of my appeals. Appeals were done. I had life in prison. Life, actually the equivalent of life without. I was never going to be able to meet the, 80 to life that they had given me or whatever.
Right.
I was just living a life of purpose and service and things like that, and self-improvement, the stuff I was just talking about. I was being of service to my community. I was, just living my life without the expectation of really ever coming home. Mm-hmm. Not in a hopeless way, just in a way that if I compare it always to the outside, it's just too painful.
Yeah.
Of what could be, right? And instead just being thankful for what is. And then an attorney who had worked with us for many years, and who is a leading voice in the conversation of juvenile justice reform within the country, a lot of different things. Shout out Joe Pertel. He's another one. I love this guy to death. We're supposed to be getting dinner here pretty soon. Been 2 years, and I can't wait to see him out here. Anyways, he hears of a program in CDCR where CDCR as an organization, if deemed fit, will send a brief down to the sentencing courts for an inmate requesting that inmate's file to be looked at for consideration to be resentenced. So when we heard about this, we got really excited because I hadn't had a disciplinary infraction for like 15 years. And I had all of these accomplishments, quiet accomplishments, not ones where I was doing it for this purpose, but just one where it was for me and for the way and the belief system I had in life. And so he tracked it down, this officer, a lieutenant, I believe it was, up in Sacramento, whose job is to review inmates' files for the purpose of potentially recommending a resentence, and contacts the guy and goes, "Hey, I got an inmate that I represent in the institution that I was at, and I think you guys should look at his file, and think about maybe sitting down a recommendation for him." So the lieutenant goes. He knew Joe enough to where he was like, okay, cool. And he looks at my file. And when he looked at my file, they decided they were going to send down a recommendation. So they sent a recommendation down to the courts.
And you're hearing all of this, right?
No, unbeknownst to me.
Unbeknownst to you. So
yes.
He's not getting your hopes up by telling you the file's been sent.
It's not that he's not getting my hopes up. It's that what happened was COVID.
Oh no.
And so this file sat on a desk for the next 3 years. While COVID was getting figured out.
Tyler.
Yeah. The courts had been completely shut down. Nobody heard anything. And what happened was this is where the story gets really fun, is the paper, the brief gets denied unbeknownst to anybody, right? During COVID, and pushed off to the side and gets lost in the system. We don't know about it. Now, in the process of that, Gascon gets elected as the district attorney in the county of Los Angeles. And one of his first things was to look at corruption within the LA Sheriff's Department and within the police department and within the district attorney's office, the county of Los Angeles. And to look at overzealous sentences and juveniles that were tried as adults. To put it in perspective, I think right now we probably try maybe 100 juveniles as adults right now, currently, probably in the county of Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. When I was tried as a juvenile, they got all the way up to 2,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was really, really out of control at that time. So Gascon is combing through these cases, and my case comes up. And when my case comes up, right, he goes, we have to do something about this. So what he does is, and this is a person that's working for him in some type of, of course, somebody's been delegated these tasks and stuff like that. But what happens is they decide that they're going to contact all these Jews. I wasn't the only one. There was others. They're going to contact them about potentially being resentenced, right? Their file is going to be sent to judges, and it's going to be looked at again to see if any of us deserve to be resentenced in what happened. In the process of that, Loyola Marymount has this nonprofit organization called the Juvenile Fair Sentencing and Innocence Project, and is head up by Miranda Sachs. I can't remember her name. Shout out to the fucking Loyola Marymount, because these motherfuckers showed up in a way that was so amazing. And they came across my case through Joe and my case was used in the state of California to tackle these life without sentences, right? And what that looks like and things like that. So my case comes up, Loyola Marymount, this nonprofit organization, these studs that are, law professors and stuff like that, find it, see it, decide that they want to be a part of this. And so they become my counsel. And now I have no resistance from the district attorney, right? Because they're backing us. And now I have Loyola Marymount, who is pushing the briefs forward. And then what happens is that then they find the brief from CDCR. They found it had been denied and all of this. But when they found that, right, because it had been denied during COVID and all of these different types of things, it was able to be brought back up and introduced into the overall brief for me to be considered eligible for resentencing. So they get all of these things together, all of this. They put together this brief. They do that. I'm talking to them. My family's super excited. My parents are really excited. All of these different things. This is the closest that I've ever been to a real conversation of coming home, except for the parole board, which is a whole nother thing. We'll get into that another time. Yeah. But this is like the most real feeling of that somebody with the ability and power and authority to look at my case from that perspective is actually at. The judge looks at it. It's not the same sentencing judge. He had moved on.
Right. I just have to say this. I'm excited for the ending, even though I know it. Yeah. This is how powerful this story is. Yeah. Keep going.
So the judge, so they approach the judge, and the judge gets my case and stuff like that. And the judge says flat out, she is not removing the life sentence.
I can't wait for the movie.
Yeah.
This is.
Yeah. So she says she's not going to remove the life sentence. She says that she feels that what was done to me was wrong, and that it was too harsh of a sentence, and that she's going to make me immediately eligible for the parole board, which is I wouldn't have the life sentence removed. But what I would do is I would go in front of a panel that's appointed by the governor in the state of California. And it's a very, very rigorous interview process to see whether or not you are eligible to be paroled back into society. And anytime you hear 15 to life, 10 to life, 7 to life, 20 to life, that's what that means. You do like 19 years off the 20, and then you go to a parole board, and then you begin this parole board process that includes 3, 5, 7, 10, and 15-year denials. So if you go to a parole board and the parole board finds you unsuitable for 7 years, you don't even go back for another 7 years to see that parole board. It used to be only a year, but what happened is Megan's Law, I believe, came into play. And so, you have these terrible acts against people. And that motivated for them to take away, the person was on parole when they did this atrocious thing. And what ended up happening was they said that this person got parole when they shouldn't. And so they need to up it from 1 year to a minimum of a 3-year denial. So if you're not ready, then you do 3 years before you go back.
Right.
And there's all these other things in there and all that. It just gets super complicated and bogged down. But this is what she's going to make me immediately eligible for. Now, I was already eligible underneath a Senate bill that had passed some years prior, and but I had to do 20 years in order to go to this parole board. And now I was like a year away, I think, at this time. So I was heartbroken because I was like, it doesn't really make a difference. I'm going to the parole board in a year anyways. So she's only going to just, it's not changing anything other than what is actually written down on paper.
Right.
And so I was devastated for about 2 weeks. You know, my family, and I just said, yeah, okay, you know, life goes on, you know,
back
this
to
time,
the boxing,
back to the boxing. Yeah, exactly. Back to life,
back to life, back to my community.
And, but she said that she was going to give me an opportunity, to speak in court if I wanted to. It would be over the phone or, no, I'm sorry. It was going to be through Zoom, which I had never done. I had never even seen, all these things had come in, you know, technologically over those almost 20 years. I was like, what the fuck is a Zoom? But, so anyways, it was going to be Zoom because of COVID, and she was giving me an opportunity to speak. And, my counsel asked me if I wanted to. And so I thought about it for a little bit, and I decided that I wanted to speak. And the reason why I wanted to speak wasn't because I was trying to change her mind. I'd already decided this is just what it's going to be. And I'll go to the parole board and I'll get another chance at another time. And I'm okay with that. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to see this as an opportunity to do what I should have done from the very beginning. And one of the things that I wished when I was beginning and embarking on this journey of amends that I would have had a second chance to do. And that's just to tell people openly in this forum how sorry I am, because of course I denied it all the way along.
Sure.
You know, so I was like, you know what? This is a time to be brave in a way that I wasn't brave when I was 17. And I need to just let everybody know how sorry I am for the choices I made at that time in my life, for the impact that those choices had, for wasting resources and time and money and dragging people through the traumatic events that I had created, right, through my choices to participate in this. And that if nothing else, they deserve, and many, you know, they had moved away, some had passed away, right? You know, like all these different things. Nobody, you know, was there physically as far as like the direct victims, but even to the courts and to the community. And say, listen, you know, for all the people out here that are paying taxes, that are doing the right thing, that are trying to, and for me,
for you to own it.
That was where I was leaving at the end, right? And finally for me to be able to do this thing that is really important, which is to just say you're sorry when you fuck up.
With no excuse.
None. Allow the judgment or the consequences of that choice to be what they are. Don't try to control them.
That's right. I call it owning your shit.
There it is, right? So, so I decided that this was a opportunity and I was thankful for it, and that I was going to approach what I wanted to say in that way. So I spent weeks, this is months ahead of when my court date is. So I spent weeks and weeks and weeks writing and rewriting and writing and rewriting. And what are all the things I wanted to touch on? You know, I wanted to touch on remorse. I wanted to touch on empathy. I wanted to touch on insight, right? And the things I had learned about myself. I wanted to talk about, you know, the way that I thought then compared to the way that I think now, and all of these different things. And I wanted it to all be brief. I didn't want to waste everybody's time by bogging down about how much I've changed and all these different things, right? I just wanted to be able to say it and people to know it as much as my apology. So, so I put together this speech, and I started to think like, damn, you know, what's it going to be? It's going to be on the Zoom thing. Well, I'm always hearing about these things glitching out on people and stuff, so I might end up being on the phone. So I start like, you know, practicing my speech over the phone to my family. Right. Because I just was so important to me to do a good job with it, you know, and just like represent myself in the best way that I could of like, hey, you know, I fucked all this shit up, but you know, anyways. So here comes the court date, and sure enough, the the judge, it's on the phone. The Zoom thing doesn't work out. I just end up being on this phone in the program office, right? And sitting there looking at a caseload worker, who's not even knowing what the fuck's going on. He's just like, hey, you got a phone call right here, a court date or something. And he's like eating his lunch. And I hear it on speaker. The judge, goes through all of the legal proceedings and stuff. My dad and my sister are in the courthouse, and they're the only ones, and my counsel. And I'm on the phone, and everybody else, my brothers and everything, everybody's got work and and stuff like that. This is all these years later, and so the judge is going through everything, and then she confirms that this sentence is going to hold. That she's just going to resentence me to the possibility of parole. She's not going to remove the life sentence and things like that. And then she says that she's agreed to let me speak and that I've agreed to speak. And then all of a sudden she goes, it didn't even seem like I was really a part of it all the way up until that point. And then she goes, you there, Mr. Corcoran? And I go, yes, ma'am, I am. And she says, you've agreed to speak? You said you want to? And I said, yes. And she said, what do you have to say? And I dropped into my speech. I spoke for maybe 2 to 3 minutes. And in the beginning of the speech, I could hear papers ruffling. I could hear people clearing their throat in the courtroom and conversations and the judge doing whatever she's doing. And probably about 30 seconds into that, everything started getting quiet. And I could feel the silence in the courtroom. And I knew that I had their attention.
Right.
And I finished my speech with my head up, proud of how I got through it. I said a bunch of stuff that I didn't even in my speech.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
I
knew that was going to happen.
It just, the only thing about practicing that it helped do was it helped me to keep it within a certain boundary so I didn't ramble and lose my train of thought. Mm-hmm. She took a deep breath. She said she needed a 20-minute recess. And she just got up and left.
Oh, my God.
And now we just sat there. And I'm hearing all this noise again and stuff like that. And everybody's kind of, I could hear and then the line goes dead. And then I sit there and the counselor looks up at me and he goes, what the fuck was all that? Right? Because I'd been crying, it was this whole thing, it was me just being bare and vulnerable and open
and honest.
And so anyways, he dives into my story. And next thing you know, he goes, oh shit, 20 minutes is up. And he puts me back on the line and the judge comes back in and she clears her throat. And she, reintroduces everything into the courtroom. And then she says that, this is a very serious thing. And she takes her job very serious and all of these different things. She was amazing. And then she says she is going to remove the life sentence. She's going to resentence me to time served. She tells me that she believes in me, Yeah.
Where's the Kleenex?
And that a lot of people believed in me.
Yeah.
And it was the most amazing thing I've ever experienced in my life.
And you deserved.
Even leaving, even actually walking out, didn't feel as impactful as when she told me that she was going to send me home. And I was so thankful.
And so am I. And so is this newborn son that's almost here. Yeah. And Stephanie and your family and all of us at Craft Boxing.
But this is the funny thing too is that it wasn't over, so she tells me she's doing all of these things and everything and that I'm sentenced to time served and I'm free to go. And the phone hangs up. Me and the counselor look at each other and he goes, what happened? And I said, you're not going to fucking believe it. He goes, what? I said, she just removed the life sentence and sending me home. And he went, are you fucking serious? And I said, yeah. And he goes, how long did you do? I said, I just did almost 20 years. And he goes, how old are you? Because he looked at me and he goes, you're not even old enough to do 20 years in here. And I said, no, I've been in here a long time. I came in with no facial hair and left with a full beard, so
Anyways, but then nothing happened. And one day turned into 2, and 2 days turned into a week, and a week turned into a week and a half. And now we were getting close to Thanksgiving, and I'm going fucking crazy. I'm wondering, is this even real?
Yeah.
And at the same time, the emotional roller coaster, because when the call was done and I walked out, I had 2 of my friends that had known me since I was like 20 years old. Mm-hmm. Like we rocked through some stuff together.
Right.
Active and not active. For those that are listening that know those terms, you know what that means. Yeah. So anyways, they see me and they go, what happened? And I break down into tears just like I did right now. My face crumbles. You're sending me home. Right. And they threw their arms around me, and then word spread throughout the yard, and hundreds of people poured out from the buildings. People that I didn't even realize that all the things I had been doing over all the years, people that had been, we were on a level 2 now. I worked my way from a 180 level 4, from a shoe program, all the way down to a level 2. And some of these people had been with me along the way, right, and to watch me grow up. And we're so proud of the fact that I had stuck to the way that I believed over all these years, right?
Yeah.
And that I was just, and now this was happening. And so I walk out, and hundreds of people pour out of their hand at me like ice creams and chips and this and that. And I'm talking to everybody, and everybody's, it's a symbol of hope, right? For everybody on the yard, that Tyler had been released, this guy that they knew had been a kid, growing up in here. And then about 3 days into it, I was like, I just wanted my life back. It was an emotional roller coaster. I was waking up at 2 a.m. crying. I was like, I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I was like, my body didn't even.
It's a shock.
Oh, I didn't even eat for like 3 days. I couldn't even. And then the week goes in, and the counselor calls me in and says, I got some bad news. And I go, what's the bad news? And I said, well, I got resentenced. So he goes, no, that's all there. But the state of California has to contact victims before you're released. And there needs to be a certain amount of time to do it. So you're not going to be released for like another 4 months. And I went, in my mind, you motherfuckers.
Yeah.
Like 4 months, man, and I went, you know what? It's cool. I'm just going to grow my beard, grow my hair. I don't even get a haircut. I'm just going to box all day. I'm not going to worry about anything. I'm just going to be fine. And I get on the phone and I tell my dad, which was the hardest part. And he goes, what? He goes, no, she said time served. I don't know, man. They're talking about all these different things with this and that. And like, this was a ground that we had never gotten to before, a release. We were like, what? So we didn't know this process. Well, come to find out what happened. So so my dad goes, there's something right about this. And he contacts Loyola Marymount, again, my counsel. And they go, hell no, that's not how that's supposed to be. Something has been wrong. So they contact the judge. This is like right before Thanksgiving. If not, I'm going to be gone. I'm going to be in there like another week waiting for this to get figured out. So they contact the judge. The judge is furious because the clerk made a mistake on the way that he typed up the written statement and then went on vacation for a week.
Oh my God. If someone wrote this, they'd go, well, that's too much. It's like, and it all happened.
All of it.
All of it.
So the judge goes, that's not it, immediately has her clerk type up a new minute order, send it to the institution. The institution has like 24 hours to do this. So next thing you know, I'm on my bunk. They start calling me over the loudspeaker like crazy, and they start zipping me around the institution doing all of the pre-release stuff because they got to get me out now. And I remember just feeling like, oh, yeah, finally, like, take my time, like I was just milking it in the way of like, loving the fact that the institution was having to like
cater
to me
and be honest and be just.
Yeah, and be honest and be just. And the fact that now I was a free man.
That's right.
The same staff that treated you a certain way now sees you as something different.
That's right.
Because you're a free man now. And so now all of these different, you have all these rights that have been reestablished. They got to get you out of there. Otherwise they're in deep shit. You can't just keep a free man in prison, when they've been deemed free. And So anyways, they bust me all around it, right? I sign everything, and the next day I walk out. Yeah.
Who's there?
Everybody. I have my dad. I have my mom, not my biological mother, but my mom who is my stepmother, who came in when I was 10 and, just did her best at filling that void, who I love very much. It's my dad, my mom, my older brother, my little brother, their 2 wives, my little brother's son, my little sister and her son, because now there's all these nieces and nephews now, over all these years.
Right.
And they come in this, Mercedes van that you see, those Sprinter vans.
Sprinter. Yeah.
They come pick me up, and I walk out of the institution. They had these big old, hand-drawn signs, "Welcome home, Tyler, we love you," and like all these different things. And they usher me into the seat, drive off, and I roll the window down. It was the first time that I had been in a car with the window down in 20 years, just about 19 years. And
what date was this and what year?
Yeah, so I was released 11/24/2021 now. It's been 2 years now. November 24th made it 2 years.
So people, are you hearing this?
Yeah.
This is just 2 years.
Yeah, this is 2 years ago. A lot happened in that 2 years.
A lot happened in 2 years.
Yeah.
And
I've been into some amazing places in those 2 years.
You have.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm going to ask.
Yeah.
I know they're going to hear more, and we want to hear what happened those 2 years, but I'm not going to give it to them right now.
Well, let's keep the suspense going.
Yeah, we're going to do another one.
All right.
Because I get to see you, not every day, but I get to see you whenever I want.
That's right.
So,
and now that you've been over here to my home and all of these different things,
right?
So thank you so much for coming over.
Of course, and to meet Stephanie and the new baby that's coming in this wonderful home that you've helped to create.
Yeah.
So just so people know, they know I box and they know about George. We had George on my podcast.
Love George.
George Foreman. Yep, the third. Make sure you always know the number.
That's right. There's so many of them.
There's so many. You won't know which one it is.
All Georges too.
That's right.
Or
and
Georgettas.
So I met Tyler there.
Yeah.
And I didn't know this story.
Yeah.
Until, I don't know, maybe 8 months ago. Something. When I first asked you, I was just going to have you on.
Yeah.
Right. And then somebody said, well, he just got out of prison. And I went, what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, this is a Buddha. This is a walking Buddha. You're telling me he just got out? Yeah, about a year ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay.
I love you, Suzi. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I love you. Yeah. And I'm so grateful that you're in our community.
Yeah.
And I want everybody to know the next 2 years, because that could have gone wrong.
Yeah, definitely. I went recently and picked up my best friend who just came home after doing 24 years. And he has followed me for the last 13 years, cell to cell, institution to institution, as we were dropping down, splitting apart, him being sent all the way up to the different institution way up north, never think I'm going to see him again, and then seeing him again. And I went and picked him up, and not everybody's experience of coming home is the same.
That's right.
I'm happy to be as much help and continue to give back to especially my brothers and sisters that are formerly incarcerated that are coming home. But for my buddy Ronnie is like, it's a reminder, and he's super thankful, but it's not always the way that it has been for me.
That's right.
That's the thing.
So Tyler, anytime I get a phone call and I answer it, or I get a text and said, Tyler gave me your number.
Yeah.
I'm there for that person.
Yeah.
You give my number to any guy coming out.
Yeah. Yeah.
At any time.
Yeah.
And I'll take that call and I'll work with them as much as they want.
Yeah, well, we need to find him. He's working and stuff, but it's only through a temp agency. He's working at like a hose manufacturing thing. But Ronnie's a good guy, and he's an amazing worker. So if we can find him some work,
that would be great. Great.
Yeah.
And I'm free.
Shout out to Ron.
Just say I'm free.
Yeah.
I was going to say I'm cheap, but I'm not.
Yeah.
Cheap. I'm a little salty, but I'm not cheap.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm so grateful. Thank you for sharing this.
Yeah.
Thanks for making the therapist cry. It's always good when you make the therapist cry. And so maybe next week we could do it. And so they air these on Mondays.
Okay.
So they'll let people know about it on this Sunday, and then they'll air it Monday, and then it will be in our library forever.
Yeah.
So, and then what we can do is we can re-air them back to back so people can get the full story of what you've done in the last 2 years, because that's pretty remarkable as well.
Thank you. And thank you for the platform. You know, just in general, like we talk like this all the time, me and you. Yeah. And these are the types of conversations that I have with everybody that's close in my life, right?
Yeah.
Is having that, is going deep. And so I'm always, you know, willing and ready to do that, to go deep. And to be able to talk about my story in this way makes me feel it's one of the components that I get to carry with me from my life in there. And there's a comfort that comes from that, because I spend a lot of time talking about my story in there and about where I'm from and this and that amongst everybody's, because everybody has a story. You know?
That's right.
And but I'm super thankful as well. So
I love you. Man,
thank you,
talk
Suzi.
about fucking crazy well. This motherfucker is about as crazy well as possible. Thank you so much. I don't know how to stop.
We'll
these
turn it off.
buttons.
I'll go get Steph.
You don't know how to do
Yeah,
that.
Steph
I know
will
how
do
to
it.
push the button over there.
Yeah.
I know how to do that. All right, everybody, be crazy well.
Okay.